Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Troutdale Planning Commission for Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. If we could have roll call, please.
Just make sure this should be on there. Now we're good. Alrighty. Commissioner Andrews?
Here.
Commissioner Minkoff?
Here.
Commissioner Leamy?
Here.
Vice Chair Prickett?
Here.
Oh, yes, she is. She's
Right there.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Here.
Chair Stephenson?
Here.
Commissioner Allen?
Here.
Okay. And with that, we will stand for Pledge Allegiance, and I will be leading this evening. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the Planning Commission this evening on a non-agenda item? Okay. And with that, did everyone receive a copy of the minutes from the July 10th, 2024 meeting?
Yes. Yeah.
Any corrections to those? Commissioner Wilcox.
I have a couple. On page 2, second paragraph where motions are being made, it says for Prickett being nominated for vice chair, it says Wilcox seconded. That wasn't me. And I tried listening to the recording and I can't distinguish on the recording between Alan and Leamy and Zach. So I don't know who it was, but it wasn't me.
I have here seconded by Leamy.
That would sound right.
Sounds right.
Yeah, sounds right.
Okay.
And one other, on page 5, the sentence that reads, Commissioner Wilcox concerned that parking allotment at the new dealership may have more customers than the parking lot can hold. I wasn't referring to the Diplomat used car lot. I was referring to the city standard that calls for one space for 1,000 square feet of building space, which I wasn't sure was the right standard, because you could have a 1,000 or 2,000 foot office space, which would only require 1 or 2 parking spaces.
Yep, that's right.
So that was my point. I wasn't taking issue with Diplomat's parking allotment, which was 15.
That's how I took it as your primary concern.
Mm-hmm.
So there we are. Rewrite that word.
Okay, so do you want to reword it? I took it the same way.
Yeah.
Just to say that my concern was with the
City standard.
the standard being 1 space per 1,000 square feet of building space. That should be enough.
Okay.
Got it.
Do you have that, Mr. Meyer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, any other corrections to the minutes from July 10th? Okay. Okay,
I move that the minutes be accepted as corrected.
okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as corrected for July 10th, 2024. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, that carries. Okay. Now on to the next big thing. We have the applicant here this evening?
No.
No? Okay. Ms. Palmer, I believe we'd have to go through hearing procedure too, right?
We don't necessarily have to. So what you're gonna do is you can open up the hearing. And then before you go through the hearings procedure, you can let the commission know that the applicant has requested a continuance.
Okay.
And then you can ask staff if we have any additional information for the commission about that continuance. And then, as chair, you can call for a motion to a date certain for that continuance. And we know that the applicant has
We have a date
requested a
certain.
date certain that we can share with the commission.
Okay. Okay, so at this time, we have land use application LU-0014-2024, which is 1360 Southwest 257th Drive. And before we go into this, the applicant has requested a continuance of this hearing to date certain of October 9th, 2024. The applicant has also signed a corresponding 120-day waiver, so we can grant the continuance. We're still within our period to do so. And so is there any objection to granting a continuance to the date of October 9th?
No.
Okay. So I'd be looking for a motion to continue the public hearing on application LU-0014-2024, 1360 Southwest 257th Drive to date certain of October 9th, 2024.
I so move.
Okay? Okay,
I just wanted to mention, I'm not available on that date, so if there's a quorum issue, you're one person down.
Good to know.
good to know. We can find you.
We know where you live.
Yeah. If there's a drone flying over or something, you'll know it's us. Right? Okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, I think we need to call the roll for this.
Alrighty. Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Minkoff,
Yes.
Commissioner Leamy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Prickett,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilcox,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Chair Stephenson.
Yes. Okay, that one is continued to October 9th. Now, on to the big packet stuff. Development Code Amendments discussion. Who wants this one? Oh,
Dakota,
Sorry, I'm just writing notes
Dakota
down,
gets-
so
you've been
give me
doing
a
such a
second.
wonderful job.
One moment, I'm just writing some notes real quick. Alrighty. So, hopefully everybody had a chance to go over. I know Commissioner Wilcox did. Thank you very much for the notes. This is kind of what I was looking for. Because as we discussed previously, other than just kind of the use tables that we've been discussing and the definitions, we are planning on wrapping all this into a full code amendment for an omnibus. So Scrivener's errors, fixing errors that have been throughout the code. So the sections, I believe there were, let's see, I have it up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 7 sections. So sorry if the packet was quite long. Some sections had more edits than others. You'll notice that some had a lot of information added, where others were minor Scrivener's errors, fixing a section that is referring, fixing a part that's referring to another section, so on and so forth. So I was hoping everybody could get a chance to review it, see what you think, see if you found anything else. And Commissioner Wilcox did provide us with some notes. I also have these printed out if anybody needs a printed copy. And so what I kind of thought is that today we could go through the notes from Commissioner Wilcox first, since we have these out. And then as we're going through, if there's anything that anybody sees, we can also make those notes as well. The hope is that we can get this as cleaned up as possible to then start either by next month or ideally next month or the next month afterwards for October, have this be coming for a full code amendment package for a public hearing and a recommendation to council. So,
Any questions? Dive in.
Not yet.
not yet. I'll start just kind of, I'm going to be just going through Commissioner Wilcox's notes here. And there's some notes in here that are more questions for us to discuss, and there are some that are some clerical fixes as well. Let's see. The first one he has is for chapter 1, which is the definitions. Under common wall, so it would be out of the full, if you have the full packet in front of you, it'd be page 10. Otherwise, it would be, where are we here?
1-4.
1-4, thank you. The comment was to move the percent from after the 25 to before the 25 and add the percent sign within the parentheses.
Yeah, the percent sign is not shown, but it will be 25% symbol.
We have agreement on that?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm just gonna kind of make marks through this, because then I can go back and make these edits afterwards. Next one is, let's see here, on 1-9 for entertainment facility major. Commissioner Wilcox had a comment to make nightclub plural as other definitions, as others, and then define nightclub. I want to get everybody's opinion on that before I speak on mine.
This is Zach. Nightclub plural makes sense for consistency's sake. I think the last time we had a discussion about defining a nightclub, we decided it wasn't necessary since the definition of nightclub and even the common dictionary kind of spells that out, including adult entertainment, which is, I think, what the main concern was at the time. That's my opinion.
This is Kevin Minkoff. I think for consistency's sake, I agree with Commissioner Andrews. We don't have definitions for amusement parks, multi-screen theaters, museums. So just to single out nightclub for definition, we'd need to either define them all or none.
And I would agree with that. I do think that nightclub could be one that could kind of be expanded upon a little, a zoo is either, a bunch of animals or a city function, it's like you only got a couple of things there but you get into nightclub, you can have all sorts of things going on. But I think we're okay with the basic definition, what we talked about last time.
Alrighty, and that's as far as the opinion from planning staff is along those lines where, especially having it plural, which I agree with that, it gives us that little bit of wiggle room to still live within that gray area without being too black and white, which allows us to do our job easier than when if it's overly black and white, then it's hard to, you're really kind of stuck in without any sort of wiggle room, so appreciate that. The next definition is on page 1-10 for food carts. Commissioner Wilcox had a question calling food carts temporary and mobile. I don't believe that this is a common understanding for that term. So from planning perspective, the reason why they're called mobile is that we have 3 separate types, or technically I think 4, and you'll notice that those have been added back into our code. Those were pulled previously. So there's food carts, food kiosk, food stands, food trucks, and trailers. So carts actually are not what we consider to be, say, we call them food carts a lot of the time for, you know, the Highlands or the Troutdale Station. Those are actually food trucks and trailers. Food carts, in the definition, they're more of what you consider a hot dog stand that you'd roll out to a sidewalk. So that's why those are considered mobile.
This is Kevin again. The food cart is not considered what we have at Troutdale Station?
Those are food trucks / trailers. Everybody, it's just the common tongue calls them food carts, but actually in definition for when it comes to planning, a food cart is like, say you're in New York and you have a hot dog stand that rolls away at the end of the day, that's a food cart. Or
Anything that you can push.
anything you can push around, yeah.
But they're still mobile.
They're still, yeah, they're mobile. They're more mobile than, like, you know, food truck or trailer. And that's why those are specifically mobile. They are not allowed to stay in one location.
Right. Commissioner Wilcox?
Dakota, before you get too far along, you skipped over.
Yeah, I was about to jump back to that one after this.
Okay,
I was just
Yeah.
gonna ask you, did we skip?
Yeah, I just noticed that.
Skip.
We're gonna jump back to it. All right, sorry, I did skip one. So on the previous page of 1-9, financial institutions. I know we had a lot of discussion on these the last couple of months. Commissioner Wilcox comment, are we sure we want to call standalone ATM a financial institution? Per our last several discussion, what I recall is that ATMs in which this definition is referring to is for financial institutions, say a Wells Fargo, say a Chase. We're not counting ATMs as far as those that are inside of a corner store or an eating and drinking establishment. So that's why they are linked to a financial institution, and that's why we opted not to change that definition.
So how can
So
we
you're
differ?
saying if it's a branded ATM,
From one.
then it's a financial institution, but if it's like I think they're called Cirrus,
Okay.
the ones that link multiple banks,
Financial institution.
so that's not a financial
In the definition
institution.
section?
Technically, in all that, I would say they all are. However, for how we look at ATMs within the code, it's only referring to those that are branded by a larger financial institution, not the small standalones. We wouldn't see a small standalone,
Yeah.
non-branded
Sorry about that.
as a kiosk in a parking lot. So,
Do you want to help me with that?
sure.
So some of them are considered financial institutions and some aren't. And so we're able to determine that?
Yeah, so for example, how we look at this, and it's under the financial institution, where a standalone ATM, not branded, linked to a larger financial institution as a sense, you know, the ones you would see if you go into Applied Pantry and they have the ATM in the corner, right? You know what I mean? Just a classic silver ATM. Those we do not consider those a financial institution within our code, because where we allow financial institutions, those do not fall under that same regulation. So that's why they're not under our code as a financial institution, because they would never be a standalone kiosk.
So like over on Division by the golf course, there's a Wells
Right.
Fargo ATM in the parking lot.
Right.
Well,
How do you know they'd
this
never
is-
be standalone?
it's good. Finish.
How do we know they'd never be standalone? Like, you know, Spanky Bank or something comes up with something and they've got this new thing, and they're not technically an institution, but
I believe there's specific rules on that. I don't know them off the top of my head, But I do believe that there are specific standards that don't allow them to be in a standalone kiosk. They have to be part of another institution, i.e. a bar, a corner store, a little mini mart that's cash only, something like that. They are required to be within those to then aid that institution that they're a part of. So there's certain guidelines for those smaller types of, the classic ATM is what I'm thinking of, right? There's certain guidelines where those have to be put within smaller institutions because the owner of that establishment gets a specific cut for having it in there. They're basically renting that ATM.
This is Kevin, and given that I work in the financial industry, I understand that ATMs, I would say ATMs are not financial institutions and can never be. They are always, regardless of whether it's standalone or on the outside of a bank building, they are always associated with some financial institution. They are an arm of some other financial institution. I would say that in our code, we need to remove ATMs as included in the list of financial institutions. They are simply an extension of other financial institutions. I think what we could have is ATM as its own definition. Put ATMs under what we've got, automobile wrecking, or I guess it had come before. After alley and before attached dwelling, and then just define it as a separate item if necessary. But ATMs are not a financial institution in and of themselves. Ever.
Commissioner Allen?
So, help me understand this. I see what Commissioner Meekoff is saying there, because he's looking at it from a banking standpoint, right? But there's also a safety aspect too. Whereas the ATMs that are within an already business usually have customers there, people there, and so forth. What you're really looking for is where are you locating these things and where do you need to have like extra patrols or whatever for security type situations? Because you certainly don't want your ATM customers starting to get knocked off everywhere, right? So could you help me with where would we currently not allow, like the Wells Fargo that was mentioned by the golf course, if you know what we're talking about? Where would we not allow that currently?
Let's see, I'm reading through the code right now to give an example.
Go ahead, Mark, he's doing that. Okay, Commissioner Minkoff, I have a friend that rents ATM machines, okay? He puts ATM machines in the bars, or I've rented from him for the corporate 4th of July Fun Festival. It is independent of any bank. He owns these ATMs, he rents them. Okay?
He provides the refunding of the money, he takes
He
the,
handles all of that.
he takes the commission.
And he sends me a check for my percentage, and then he makes the money, and he stocks the machines.
So he is the financial institution.
In a way, but it's not.
The
It's not
ATM,
federally, it's not like a bank where you're federally, but at ATM, like the one at the Wells Fargo at the golf course, you can make deposits at that, you can make withdrawals at that one. You can't make deposits at the pub down here. You can only take money out, you can't put money in. So there is a difference between a bar, ATM or something, and a freestanding kiosk, bank-owned facility.
well, then I would say that's another reason to have its own definition.
I think, so I'll go back to Commissioner Allen. Within our code, we don't have it listed as a use within residential because we don't allow any financial institution. Because remember, this isn't just ATM, this is financial institution, this is banks. So that's what the overarching, and a subset of banks are ATMs. That's why they're listed within this. If we go down the rabbit hole of listing out a definition of its own ATM, then we have to make sure we put that in our code as well. So currently, we don't even have it listed as a possibility in residential zones. We don't allow it in, financial institutions are conditionally permitted within the IP zone, not permitted in the light industrial or general industrial. And then they're both permitted then we list it out for the mixed use, for drive-through and non-drive-through. The drive-through portion is either drive-through bank or an ATM. That's where that section comes in. So where you can have say you're, downtown in a larger city somewhere, and you're walking by a street, it's not necessarily a bank there, but you see a Wells Fargo or Chase Bank ATM that's part of it. That's in a mixed-use location. That's why they allow a financial drive-through, quote-unquote, walk-up financial institution. So I think going down into labeling and defining ATMs, then we're gonna have to have a subset of what is the difference between a financial ATM and a non-ATM. And I think that's where things get a little bit more convoluted, because as a planner, when I look at it as a financial institution, we refer to that as banks. We don't refer to that as the rented ATMs. So that's kind of where we wouldn't allow, as a planner, we wouldn't allow a standalone rented ATM bolted to the side of the street. Because there's a lot of liability that comes with that.
So to Commissioner Leamy's point, if there's an event and you need cash flow at that event, then the rented ATM or the temporary ATM that just distributes cash, that can be useful, just like having porta potties at an event.
Exactly.
Could help with the cash flow and the event, right? But since it doesn't take in money or do deposits and that sort of stuff, it's not really a financial institution.
Exactly, because there's only so much money on hand on any ATM, that's for even the financial institution ones. However, you can't deposit large checks.
It's a limited liability.
Exactly. So that's why concerts, for example, then they will they rent ATMs from someone, so that we have a cash-only location. Boom, at the end of that concert, that is gone. It moves with it, like you said, just like a porta
And
potty
I
would
think
be.
we want people to be able to do that for this. Right?
And I just think we could pull it out and define it. I just think that goes down and we're gonna have to really figure out how to word that properly.
Yeah, and I know from a safety aspect, you don't just want ATMs everywhere, because how can you keep those locations safe should you be running into a problem?
Exactly.
Give you another example, Dakota. We're in Ridgefield, Washington, recently whole downtown area. There's a corner hardware store at the main intersection there. And I was walking by, there was a ATM machine actually embedded into the corner of the building. It wasn't branded, there's no bank attached to that hardware store. It's just literally built into the wall. So, from a safety standpoint, it's not like it's inside a 7-Eleven or a Dottie's or whatever. You're right out there in the street.
Those do occur, and how we're looking at it is more of, like I said, financial institutions, we look as branded kind of banks, rather than the separate standalone, because those do occur. You can walk around downtown Portland and see those as well. But how we look at it is more of a branded institution, as a financial institution. And, that leaves it up for our interpretation too, because someone could say Bitcoin's a financial institution. And they are now having banks where or ATMs where you can cash out your Bitcoin, right? But that's something that leaves it up to us to determine whether or not that is something that can have a standalone kiosk or built in. Typically in that situation, whoever owns that property or the leasee, whoever puts that there, holds the liability for it. I think that's the main thing, where if something happens at a bank ATM, a branded bank ATM, that liability then falls to the bank.
Commissioner Allen, speaking, sorry. So the question I have is, I haven't thought this angle through. It's, you have a non-financial institutions standalone ATM, and then that gets bought out by a financial institution. Is that gonna cause us a problem?
Typically, no, because they'll remove that ATM and put in their own. Because they want to have everything linked to theirs. Just like, say you don't have Wells Fargo banking, but you can still go use a Wells Fargo you'll just be charged a crazy fee. That's how they make their money on it. Same kind of, where they won't take that because they want to have theirs in there so they can charge their fees. The fees for the standalone ATMs that are not linked to a financial institution, those go to the person who owns that. That's why sometimes fees are $3, sometimes they're a lot higher. They judge that. I think there's a federal cap where you can't charge $10 per transaction or something like that. But that's why if you go to different ones, sometimes they're slightly different. It's based on the owner and basically also usage. So if a financial institution, say, were to buy out a location, they want to put their bank in there, guaranteed that first thing that's gone is that ATM, because whoever owns that, whether it is the corner market person who owns it, or if they're renting it from someone, they're either gonna come take it, or it goes with it, and they're gonna take all the money out, and then like, do what you will with it.
Impressive knowledge of ATMs.
I did a lot of research.
So it's kind of a one-way street. This is Commissioner Minkoff. Financial institutions can have ATMs, but not all ATMs are owned by financial institutions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where the confusion can set in if we try to get down and to have a separate definition specifically for ATMs.
We okay with that one?
Yeah.
We're giving you one, Dakota.
I worked hard for it. All right, moving on. We're going to move on to page 1-7 for gyms. The comment from Commissioner Wilcox is, I question swimming pool as a common gym amenity.
This is Zach, Commissioner Andrews, speaking. I think the last time we discussed that, it was, again, kind of in the spirit of including those options that you do at times see in 24-hour fitnesses or places along that caliber that do have pools, in order to make it easier for us to process those applications if they include a pool, specifically, isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I don't personally see a problem with including that as an option in a gym.
Oh, I think the page number might be off.
Okay, so it's page 17.
Sorry, yeah, page
It's
1-11.
1-11.
Yeah, page 17, 1-11.
What about something like may include a swimming pool? I get where you're coming from, and usually including locker, shower rooms, offices, classroom, and swimming pool.
It's like usually covers.
I don't think it usually
Yeah.
is a swimming pool.
Yeah, I disagree with the usually also.
We can-
I've been members of gyms and I've never had one that had a swimming pool.
Right.
And that's
Some do.
Yeah, some do, but we can change that language to kind of
What
along
if
what
we
you're
went to
saying. is
usually and then stopped and then
We could
and
have,
may include a swimming pool?
we can remove usually and just put may in there, and then
It
include
may include,
a locker
Okay.
room and shower, or a locker and shower room.
yeah.
You would hope they've got showers.
Okay, so this is Commissioner Lamy here. So what you're really saying is a gym is a building or room containing space and equipment for various indoor sports activities. If that's all I have, it's still a gym, right?
Yes.
And then a bonus is lockers, showers, office, classroom, swimming pool.
Right.
But if I don't have any of that, I'm still a gym.
You could be a gym.
Right, okay.
How does this affect a hotel that has like an exercise room?
They don't have lockers and showers.
But they don't have to,
They don't have to.
that's what I'm saying.
It's,
Now,
that's why it says
they
it
don't
may
have any.
Right.
Yeah.
include. But I don't consider, deadlifting or all the treadmills and so on as sports activities. Aren't those exercise equipment?
I mean, some consider lifting a sport, so that's why that's considered that. I mean, this also includes
Running.
yoga studios,
Well, yeah,
Pilates, things that aren't necessarily sports, but it's an active use.
could we say exercise and indoor sports activities?
Or do we change sports to exercise?
We can change it to
They're
exercise.
I
kind
would
of,
just say for various exercise and indoor sports activities.
okay. That works.
But we're not gonna accidentally target the hotel with the exercise room.
No,
Okay.
And
we're
for
not
using that as an
requiring them
example,
to have that.
there was something similar when I was in my previous jurisdiction where they had to be listed out, because that would be an accessory use to a hotel. And they said they weren't a hotel, they were just doing one, next thing you know, they had rooms in there, and that was a whole ordeal where we had to go back to them after it was already constructed, because how it was approved wasn't what they actually ended up building. They added stuff later on, so that's why it's good to kind of have a nice little blanket, because most hotels will have some sort of equipment room or exercise room. Some call it a gym, some say, sometimes it's a really small little area that has a couple of weights. So this kind of gets us away from having to run into a situation like that.
Okay.
So we're gonna remove indoor sports activities, or indoor sports, and put exercise activities, right? Various exercise activities?
I think it was just gonna be added, so
Add,
Oh, indoor
equipment for
sports
various exercise and
Okay,
indoor sports activities.
perfect.
And may include continuation.
perfect. Alrighty. Thank you all.
The and or? Properly, would that need to be an or an?
Or, you are right,
Or,
exercise.
Yeah, or.
yeah,
Thank you for catching that.
We're
Okay.
getting into Boolean logic
I
now.
that's our job.
I'm a computer electrical engineer.
Ah,
Okay, now we're moving on to page 23 or 1-17. Retail use. Commissioner Wilcox had a comment stating, "I question the word consumption." I know this is something we talked about a while back. How do we want to go about reading throughout this?
well, that's a common term for acquisition, used for acquisition of goods from a retail establishment. I know consumption often, you think of it as eating or somehow using up and disposing of, but ultimate, for direct consumption, it can also mean fixed goods. I'm gonna buy tools, and so
You're gonna
that's
buy
for
a
direct
car, you're still,
consumption.
it's the consumer is
I
what,
think it's still, yeah,
it's considered the consumer.
so it's consumption, because it relates to the consumer.
Commissioner Wilcox?
I can see
Oh, yeah.
conflating consumer and consumption, but it doesn't sound right to me.
But if you're,
Like you don't consume a refrigerator.
no, but you're considered the consumer when you're buying it,
Right,
and you're buying it for yourself.
Yeah, not buying it just to,
is really
Sell to
what we're
somebody
trying
else.
to differentiate here, is if you're buying it for yourself or buying it for someone else.
Well, it was almost better the way it was, where it said ultimate consumer.
Well, it was, but we decided to change it, so.
Nothing set in stone, we could always.
I like the old way better.
So in the Cambridge dictionary, it talks about, well, situations in which information, entertainment, et cetera, is intended for a particular group. They cite a sentence, the film was not intended for public consumption. Well, you wouldn't eat a film, but the word consumption is used to mean acquiring,
you're taking it in, maybe not
taking it in,
mouth, but visually or whatever,
yeah.
visually, physically, something.
Okay. Good with it the way it is?
You could always add utilization instead, if you want to get real big words in there.
Pardon me?
You can always put utilization in there, if you want to get more big words.
I think you're getting too far.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Next up is on the same page, sales or retail, vehicle and equipment services. Oh, that's just a Scrivener's error. I agree. There should be a period at the end of there. Period missing. And then also a question is, would this include boats?
A boat is not a vehicle.
This is Commissioner Andrews. I'm looking through like the industrial zoning charts when we are including automobile, truck, trailer, heavy equipment, recreational vehicle, boat, and manufactured home services. Card lock, fueling stations, truck stops. I mean, it seems to be anything having to do with vehicles, sales, servicing, repair. In that sense, I mean, the wording on it's a little bit different here than it is in some of the mixed use, where it basically has the section of vehicular and equipment services and then the subsections of fueling stations, repair shops, sales or rentals, but
And what zone?
the example that I just listed was the mixed use, but I was comparing originally with the industrial zoning under commercial uses.
Towards the bottom of that page.
Yeah, 3.420.
$420, you said?
I mean, it seems to include boats in that kind of general definition, which I guess makes sense. It's gonna have kind of the same layout when it comes to some kind of showroom or office space, and then a lot full of vehicles of one kind or another. RVs being varied in size and at times large. I mean, that used to be what that lot is. That is now that used car lot that we approved, so.
Would it be various types of trailers too?
Seems to be the case, yeah. So.
Would it help you if that was more conditional?
So as we have it listed out right now, in our code within the commercial and industrial, it's listed out in both of those. So right now in our commercial zones, it's not listed out under vehicular equipment and services, to where in the general commercial repair shop would be permitted. And then for both general commercial, and, community commercial, they're both permitted for sales. Or sorry, conditionally permitted for sales and rentals. So we would look at that as the same, like if someone came to me and asked if they could do sell boats, I look at that as a recreational vehicle, in which the only case then it is listed under the industrial. So therefore I would look at it, in the commercial zone, you can conditionally permitted sell, recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, because that would have to come in front of planning commission in order for approval. Same with cars. In the industrial zone, there's 2 that are permitted or 2 that are conditional and 1 that is a no. I'm just looking at sales, sorry. Sales are no in the IP and then permitted in the LI and GI, but repair shops is the same. How we've looked at it in the past, if we've gotten a call, is we basically follow those guidelines of wherever you would be able to sell a car or do a car rental, we'd follow the same guidelines, even though it's not listed out.
Commissioner Levy?
Don't we have a boat sales place over here on Marine Drive?
Yes.
So how are they?
Here, that's in the industrial zone, so I'm assuming that would either be in the light industrial or general industrial, because those are permitted outright.
Okay.
And in that section, it actually does list out the vehicles.
That's about.
So I'm happy to add that, because I don't think that's a big issue, if we wanted to.
Do you need it?
I don't think we necessarily need it, because these things aren't permitted in residential zones anyway. And if they are going to be in commercial, that has to come in front of this group for approval regardless.
Okay. We okay with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Is Paul okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanna double check.
All right, on the next page, this is more of a question for subdivision. And I can answer this. The definition states subdivision, to divide land to create 4 or more lots within a calendar year, when each area or tract of land exists as a unit or contiguous units of land at the beginning of such year. The reason why it's 4 or more is because under a partition, you can partition a lot up to 3 under a partition, which is a type 2. Subdivisions, for the most part, are type 3, and that's so basically anything over 3 subdivision, anything under partition. So that's why it's 4 or more.
Okay.
Yep. And okay, I was
And
making
those
sure.
are like also state definitions.
State definitions, yeah.
Unless they're tiny lots.
Tiny lot subdivision.
It's coming.
Next year, I can divide it again.
All right, moving on to page 28. Utility runway. Scribner's fix, spell out 12,500 pounds. Happy to do this. I do want to bring up just a thought. So I know we're doing this throughout our code. There's a lot of sections where this will have to be updated. Not a problem. In previous jurisdictions, I've had something similar where we've done an omnibus to change to something similar. Except for what we did is we spelt out everything 10 and lower, and then left numbers for everything over 10. Now, that was just that jurisdiction. Every jurisdiction is different. I just wanted to clarify and make sure that we would like everything to be spelt out and then with the parentheses on the other side. Because if so, then I'll make sure to go through the code and try to find every single one of those and do that. I just want to make sure before I do that, we have that consensus across the board, right?
I believe that's the correct grammar for this purpose. I see even earlier on that same page, 28, the width of the primary surface is 250, and then in parentheses, 250,
Okay.
et cetera.
Yep, and I see that lower on that side, in the next one. Okay, cool, that's perfectly fine. Just wanted to make sure that I have clarification for all that, because like I said, I'll go through there, and you'll notice there are some areas within there that don't. So we'll go through and we'll make sure that's part of the omnibus. And that's exactly what an omnibus is for, is fixing things like that.
Now, is 12,500 pounds, what's the significance of that?
That I am not entirely sure off the top of my head.
Does
I
that follow-
believe,
Does it follow Oregon?
I believe that's,
Law?
Like FFA.
I think it's an FFA guideline, because that's part, I believe that is.
FAA, not
Yeah.
FFA.
Right,
That's part of the air, yeah, so that's the airport
WMA.
regulations.
What the runway's designed to handle.
I see,
Yeah,
thank you.
all right, we're gonna move on to page 40, or 1-34. This is when we get into recreational vehicle, RVs. The question that Commissioner Wilcox had is under item C, light-duty truck towing 40-foot fifth-wheel trailer. So do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more, Commissioner Wilcox?
It's just using the terminology light duty in relation to trailers in general. I mean, not every trailer can be towed by a light duty truck, is the point.
You're looking at RVC, right?
So
Right.
See, correct.
in this case, a trailer, a camper trailer is considered an RV?
Because for towing and regulating them, we treat them just like a regular RV.
Mm-hmm.
So just strike the two words light duty.
You can almost delete what it's being towed by. You know, 'cause some travel trailers can be towed by a SUV. So just end the sentence, permanently towable, period.
Well, and I'm
Okay with that.
wondering
Designed to be permanently towable.
what does
and stop there.
permanently towable mean?
Meaning
Has
it
to
does
be
not
towed.
propel by,
Permanently.
does not propel by itself in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. Yeah,
So is a food trailer an RV
that's,
because it's permanently towable?
Different
no,
use.
different use. So while you can cook in an RV, it's not set up, because all of those are required to have commercial kitchens based on guidelines from both the county and the state.
3-compartment sink. Da-da-da-da.
So if it's not constructed in which way, then it is not considered an RV.
So I do question, I kind of see what Commissioner Wilcox is saying there. Because it says light duty truck, but of course they wanted to sell me my truck, so they said it was heavy duty. It's necessary to pull my little trailer around, right? Are we gonna have problems with the definition of light duty truck?
I think, as was mentioned, just striking after towable. I think that's a permanently towable, and then moves on to and. I think that's a good idea. It gets us away from the truck. For example, my mother has a 7,000-pound, 24-foot trailer that she tows with her SUV.
So designed to be self-propelled or permanently towable stop and delete by a light-duty truck
Yep,
and designed primarily not for use in commercial, don't, okay,
I like that.
right. Good with that?
Okay, we're gonna move right along to page 47, 3-4. Thank you for catching this, Commissioner Wilcox, I do agree. There are now 4 listed residential uses, not 3. So this is something that we should easily be updated. This was not updated when they added the HDR zone. So. I agree. On the same page, another Scrivener's writing out 1/4 mile. Or it is written out, but having the parentheses in there, I agree. And then moving on to the next page, under table, the table for 3.120, Commissioner Wilcox question, why are townhomes and duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes treated differently? So this is, while they're all permitted, this is something that came out with the middle housing. So there's different design requirements, and you could do 0 lot line for some, but not all. You can now have say you have a large single family, or you can now have a duplex and then divide the lot, and it has a shared lot line. So we're now 2 separate entities on their own lots. So that's why they're all treated differently now. That came out to basically what's the word I'm looking for? To create more housing is how I've always taken that. Because we want to increase the number of housing. So each one is listed out separately because they have separate requirements for each. There's different design requirements, spatial requirements, setbacks. That's why they're all listed out separately.
What I've never understood how you distinguish between, say, a 2-unit townhouse and a duplex.
It's a confusing one, but I have to think about my answer for a second.
It's the wall,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
it's
just
the
about to
wall.
say, it's the wall.
it's the wall.
The wall? Which wall? The wall in between the two?
Yes, so a townhome typically is on its own lot.
Yes.
Yeah,
But it
So there's
doesn't,
a common wall, but there's also a lot line that goes down that wall.
So they're separate tax lots.
Right.
correct.
yes.
Where a duplex is one.
And now with middle housing, if you have a duplex, you can turn it into a townhome by separating that parcel right down the middle. So now they're on 2 separate parcels but still attached with middle housing too, in order to create more independent housing. So it's all based on the parcel itself and where the lot line goes.
Okay, so that part makes sense to me, but from a practical standpoint, what difference does it make whether they're on separate tax lots or a single lot?
What's the difference?
Yeah.
So if they're on separate tax
I
lots,
mean, why should they be treated differently in the code? Because one's two tax lots, the other one's 1 tax lot.
because you're building one to be, basically to be rented, you're building the other one to be sold.
Not necessarily. People buy duplexes to live in.
They do, but you have separate tax lots for those.
Not necessarily.
For a townhome, you would,
Or not duplex, you wouldn't though.
right? That would be 1 tax lot, typically.
Typically.
And a duplex, and a townhome would be 2.
Yeah, but the people own duplexes and live in both sides.
But it's only a single owner for
Right,
that duplex.
that's one owner.
Where a townhome is each individual one has its own owner.
Right.
Yeah. In that same section, there's another question of cottage cluster, a cottage cluster home in the HDR town center. Could you elaborate a little bit more?
I just question why cottage cluster would be allowed in that zone.
Isn't cottage cluster one of those that we can only regulate from pretty limited perspective?
So in any zone that we allow single-family homes in, we have to allow for cottage clusters. Cottage clusters, you know, typically have a higher density per parcel because you're creating 4 more little small cottages on a parcel. So oftentimes you will see the allowance for cottage clusters in high-density residential areas.
So then, but then that supports what Paul is saying. It says no or an N under HDR, not high-density residential. But you're saying that they generally are.
Yeah,
How middle housing was initially written is they wanted to keep you can, in some cities, this is where they left it up to the city.
yes.
They wanted you to be able to keep high-density residential for apartments. That's what they wanted. They wanted apartment complexes to create as much density as possible. They left it up to the cities if they would allow it in certain zones. The town center is more of a residential, so cottage clusters, I'm assuming at the time this was done previous, I haven't read through that code amendment fully, but understanding the housing bill, that's more residential zone, so they left it up to the city to either allow it or not allow it, because they're more home style. They're basically 5 tiny homes on a lot is essentially what it is. So that's why they left it up to the city. So we didn't want to have, I'm assuming in Troutdale, in an area that's zoned high density residential, we would prefer to have apartment complexes rather than a cottage, because we can fit more people in there and abide by the state mandate.
And looking at this, you know, especially MU1 and MU3, MU3 is primarily the confluence.
It's the only spot.
It's
It's the
Really
only-
difficult
Yeah.
to have cottage cluster going on down there and have that thing work, because you don't have any rise to it.
But according to this, we could also put a manufactured home park down there, right?
We've thought about that too.
Because according to this, which surprises me, I didn't realize we wanted manufactured homes
Well, we
in town
don't.
center. So why we're allowing them in town center,
We weren't allowing it. It was being allowed for us.
right?
But if we could pull that, that'd be really cool.
It does seem to be a crazy thing to happen in the town center.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, what was that where it says manufactured home permitted? Within the
Town center.
town center?
Town center.
H,
Manufactured homes are not.
I'm looking at HDRTC.
yeah. H
That is permitted, it's not, manufactured home parks are
Parks,
not.
not permitted, but manufactured homes are
Are.
permitted.
Yeah.
And we can't distinguish between manufactured homes and.
So on a single lot, you can.
Yeah.
You just couldn't put a roof of them
Yeah, exactly. You're not allowed to have a park, but you can put a single on a lot.
here.
Okay.
Alrighty. Moving on to the next page. So page 50 or 3-7. 3.130 triplex and quadplex, 10 feet and 10 feet for front and rear setback. Cottage clusters 4 per net acre density.
know the reason why. You know the reason why too? I'll let you answer.
You can go ahead.
That was actually a state rule requirement on density for cottage clusters. The minimum was 4 units per acre. Or, yes,
Per net acre.
per net acre. It was written into the House Bill 2001 state regulatory language.
Okay, well, I just thought that was a pretty generous minimum. That's a 10,000 acre or 10,000 foot lot per unit.
Not per unit.
It's 4,000 per net acre. So if it's under an acre, then you have to do the calculation.
Yeah.
And that's where it's based on the use. So if it's cottage cluster, then it has to go based on that calculation, which I think we have a density dwellings, lot coverage, that's lot coverage. I know we have one in here somewhere. Because the whole point of a cottage cluster is to be on a smaller parcel. This language is right out of the housing bill. To where you can get more small dwellings on a single lot.
So cottage cluster development and dwellings, we have the minimum lot size square feet. So in the LDR 1 is 10,000. So that is a lot. But then you have your little cottage clusters within that lot,
There it is.
your cottage cluster development.
Yeah, but you're not specifying how many cottages there are per cluster.
Correct.
You can build,
You would have to, it comes down to site design.
yeah, it comes down to site design.
It comes down to site design at that point. How everything's gonna fit, because you have common open space within a cottage cluster, development. Parking, typically.
Parking, they do require parking, yeah, it's a dwelling unit. So you typically would have a parking, and then also the design is very specific. They each have to open to a courtyard. Each one has to open to a courtyard. There has to be a walking path from the parking. Parking has to be in a location not along, directly along a primary arterial, but set back, so you have to have like a way to get in there. Within our code, I think there's a diagram that kind of shows it. So really, it comes down to, you have a 10,000 square foot lot. There's, I believe, a minimum of 4 per net acre. You can't do less than 4 cottage cluster. You can't do less than 4 cottages in a cottage cluster. You have to do 4 or more. So if you have a really big lot, you can put more in there as long as you meet all the requirements. I think it's 10-foot spacing between each building. You can't be more than 10 feet setback from the primary courtyard. You could also have a single family, you could have a single house on a lot and put cottages on there, with that house being used as, say, a community center. You can put 4 on there with that house no longer being residential in the sense that it was, but used as if you put them around the house, that is now in the center, that's part of the courtyard, that is the community center. So then there's 4 then individual homes on a lot with 1 single family originally, but that's no longer used as a house to live in. So it's, cottage clusters get very kind of detailed and in the weeds. It really comes down to site design.
Okay, sorry, clarification. So you're saying cottage cluster, I can have a minimum of 4 on an acre?
No, 10,000.
Well, per net acre. So you can have, you have to have a minimum of 4 on an acre lot type thing.
Okay, so that's over 10,000 square feet per cottage.
Not many places,
That's what I just said.
but not many,
But not when,
we don't have that, we don't have the space for that. The design is to be small, almost like, they used to call them ADU communities. before cottage clusters became a thing, where there's smaller lots to where, hey, I have a smaller lot, I want to build this, typically with a larger lot. For example, I worked on a project in my previous, they wanted to put in houses, but then there was a lot that wasn't quite big enough, and they could put in a cottage cluster in the back end of that development. So it's a development with a cottage cluster on the back end, because then they subdivided the lot. You wouldn't typically see a cottage cluster being built on a large lot.
Okay,
The reason for that is it's not cost effective.
that's what I was trying to do, is like, when would you ever do this, but. that
Because there
makes-
are density, like
That
that's
makes sense.
for per net acre, and then there's also, when you get deeper into it, there's density requirements on top of that of like how, you have to make sure you're meeting the setbacks, make sure you have the proper frontage. It gets, like I said, it gets really into the weeds. I will say they're not fun to work on. They're a cool idea, they're difficult to,
Administer.
yeah, to make work. Does that satisfy the questions?
Yeah, move forward.
Okay. On page 53, 3-10, we have under E7 setbacks, multifamily 20-foot setback. Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Just question why a multifamily would have a setback twice the size of a duplex.
Multifamily is separate than a duplex. Typically, multifamily is what we look at as, it's a step below a shared dwelling, which is, or no, sorry, multifamily is apartments. So when you're going to go vertical and increase the density, you need to make sure that you still meet your open space requirements. So there's typically a larger setback compared to a duplex or a triplex, for the purpose of there's more people, you need to have more room for them to move around, in a sense, like outside. Compared to if you're doing a quadplex, you have certain outdoor space requirements. So that's why there's a larger for multifamily.
Okay, 'cause there are two-story duplexes.
Yeah, it's more the density of the people staying. Multifamily, you're figuring that's over quadplex. So I think for an apartment complex, the minimum is 5 dwelling units. Because if it goes fourplex, then the next is 5 for apartments. And then then it changes from vertical mixed use, or if you're doing all residential.
But your 5 to what? What would be the highest side?
For apartments?
As many as you can
Oh,
fit.
the density requirement
Yeah.
that you would hit.
No, in one unit, in one building.
Density, or how many units do you have within that structure? And that comes down to the density requirement,
So it could be anything.
It could be anything.
depending on the size of the
On
lot.
the size of the lot.
And make sure you still meet the open space requirements. And if you're going to provide parking, that goes against all that. So it's a percentage. You have to make sure you calculate it properly. Here's how many you can, if you're maximizing, say you can do 200 units. But make sure that you factor in your open space requirements, make sure you
Height.
factor in, the height,
Yeah.
type thing.
Where's that 20 feet setback from?
It's probably been in your code for a
Yeah.
long time. Typically, you don't change
I mean, what's the measurement off of?
the property line.
Property line to the structure.
Yeah, so
The
front
rear-
yard, so from the front property line, the one that's underlined here is the front setback is 20 feet. So that's front,
It didn't seem like there's new ones on the house here, 20 feet back.
street side yard is less, it's 10 feet, rear yard in HCR zones.
30% staff, 30.
Then it gets into if there's an alley, non-alley sort of thing. So it varies, but always the front is set back, because typically that's where your parking is going to be. And they don't want you walking straight off the, straight onto the street. Unless we're doing vertical mixed use, because then that's different. Because mixed use goes into.
I was just thinking, if I was on Halsey, it didn't seem like they're 20 feet off sidewalk.
They're probably not.
The new.
The Fox Ridge.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the case file. I'm not sure if they had, I know they had a variance for height, but I'm not sure if they had a variance for setback.
They could tear them down.
All right, we're actually gonna
Somebody
jump,
that would like that.
There goes my house.
we're actually gonna jump back to page 48 real quick, on page 3-5. I actually think it's forward.
But I think that one's been covered, Dakota.
Yep, I think that one's covered, so. Thanks for bearing with me. All right, page 62. Uh, 3.235, section B3. And then the comment here is see Sandy Street, A.102.C. Are you speaking about the appendix?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that one was covered elsewhere.
yep. Oh, it's a little redundant.
Yeah.
That's where we had discussed where some of Appendix A has been moved into other sections of our code, but not all of Appendix A has been moved into a section of our code, so that's why it still exists.
It's not only redundant, but it repeats the mistakes that are in the impact.
Yeah, so can we fix 3?
Yes. Yes. We will fix that.
Good catch.
Yeah, that's a great catch. All right, page 66. This gets into, so this is for uses within the commercial zone, entertainment facilities, major and minor. This is where we added the footnote B. Commissioner Wilcox's question was, should there be a square footage figure for major versus minor?
Probably not the way we're regulating the uses.
I would agree, based just purely on the definitions.
Yeah.
Okay, while we're there, there was actually an additional error I found.
Stop it.
Probably not on your master list. Footnote for entertainment facilities major is 3.235B. And down at the bottom of the page is 3325B.
Oh, thank you. I saw, just pull up your email today that you sent over today. Thank you. I will make that change.
Had problems with footnotes in the past.
That's
Yes,
actually
we have.
what we fixed, what you had sent me over earlier this year that we were going through fixing, because that was some good, you're referencing a section that no longer exists and so on and so forth. So thank you for catching that. Okay. Let's see. All right, moving on to section 4, or 3.420. Which is page number 71. The comment here is gyms in the industrial area, is this the best land use? Where we added the gyms in there with the square footage.
Where are you at?
It's page 3-28, page 71. Gyms.
And what's the issue?
Up about 4 from the bottom.
2.8 or 2.9?
2.8, at least on mine. It's 4 up from the bottom.
So the question is, in industrial area, can you have a 5,000 square foot gym?
I think it's more, is that the best land use, correct?
Yeah,
Commissioner
that was my
Wilcox, is it the
question.
best land use for industrial land? Should we allow it in the industrial land?
I've had some really nice employers in the past that had exercise facilities within the, the plant. That could easily hit the 5,000 mark, right?
That would be an accessory to the primary use. That's more of an amenity. I think this is more standalone active recreation is what we're discussing here.
So this would be like a really small facility.
So why would we limit that?
I think there's been issues with Metro in the past about how industrial land is used to provide the most maximized jobs for.
Is it outright permitted or is it a conditional use?
It's permitted
If it's small.
up to 5 and over 5 is conditional. And I think what we're referring to there is the size of the lots, right? Okay, because we even talked to the port before about breaking some of those down, and Metro
Right.
got pretty agitated over that. And so I'm just thinking this would be like a use, ancillary is something else. What if you've got a smaller space, you can't get somebody in there?
I can see where Commissioner Wilcox is coming from.
Oh, I can too, but it's like, I don't know that you would build, well, you never know, but I don't know that somebody would build a gym down there. And I think that's where you're going. Is somebody builds a giant gym down there, is that the best use of the land?
Right.
But that would also be conditional. That would come before this body.
Well, not if it's small, right? So those 5,000 square foot lot.
Yeah, but nobody's gonna buy a trip lot and put a 5,000 square foot gym on it.
Right, that's true.
So are you suggesting, Paul, that gyms up to 5,000 square feet even,
Be
You-
conditional, is that what you're
that it
thinking?
should be conditional rather than C rather than P?
Or just not permitted at all at that?
Truthfully, there's not a whole lot you can do with 5,000 square feet.
I was questioning gyms being allowed in industrial at all.
Well, we already allow them conditionally.
Yeah, we do.
So up to 5,000 feet ought to be conditional as well, as over 5,000 feet. In fact, you're suggesting they probably wouldn't build it anyway,
Right, but it's like,
But if they did, it ought to,
I think the question is if someone were to come in, because we already allow, say, gyms in that area conditionally. If someone were to come in to put in let's just use like a CrossFit, really small space, would you guys want to see that? Would you want it to come in front of you for a small CrossFit space to go in the industrial area?
I think no.
So that it should stay how it is permitted outright. If you don't want to see it come in front of you, then it would be staying under 5,000 square feet, then it would be permitted outright.
If we don't want to see it come before us,
I'm taking this
If we
of
don't
almost
want
like the
it at
commercial
all,
space.
then we just put no. But ends there,
You could do that.
I think is what I'm actually
Okay.
saying, I'm sorry.
is not to permit it.
Is to not permit it, then it doesn't come before us.
Yeah, so yeah, that's why we were on.
Yeah, but I
Same
guess
thing,
on the other
different
side
words.
is, why would that be something we would not want in our city?
Just in the industrial area,
Why?
Cause it's industrial land.
because
It's a higher and less use.
we want industry there, manufacturing.
Okay, so you've got the I-5 corporate space, and you've got 5,000 feet that's vacant, and somebody wants to put a gym in there. And we say no. I guess what's the justification for that? Because we want something different?
That's correct.
And what if they can't find something different? Or what if nobody wants to rent 5,000 feet? You see where I'm going?
Then we wait until somebody does.
Yeah, the property owner does.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a small house lot, right? 5,000 square feet.
Yeah, 5,000 feet would be like a couple of, what, in a flex space, it'd probably be what, 3 units? Erica?
For, what was this?
Like if it was a flex space, 5,000 feet would probably be close to 3 units.
About 50 by 100.
But I
Yeah,
think in the city, we have a lot of 7,000 square foot lots and some 10,000 square foot lots. So it's kind of really a small house lot, really.
How big is O'Malley's? They take up that whole building.
Yeah,
Well, up to the end, I think there's like another businesses
Is
based
there
over
somebody
there,
else
so,
in there?
so they do share it with some food.
Right.
But yeah, there's like an archery place right there. I've seen boxing places, CrossFit places go into like industrial park style buildings like that.
I mean, I can.
So I think in the case that in the situation that you outlined, that may be permissible. Nothing else could fit in there. Nothing else, no one else needs that small of a space, and so maybe a CrossFit works there. But in other industrial areas where somebody wants to build a new 4,000 square foot CrossFit, where we're trying to reserve that space for true manufacturing plant, I think that the best mark here would be C, would be conditional.
Right.
Then we could determine, yeah, okay, in this case, it's permissible, but in some other case, in industrial areas, no, we don't want it.
right, so I guess my question then is, which lots are we worried about this happening at? We can't say trip, because those are regulated. Okay, so what industrial lots are we thinking that this would be an issue on?
So what, industrial park? Are we talking about light industrial, general industrial?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so the bulk of it's
Freeway
trip,
north,
right?
Right?
And trip's regulated. So we don't have to worry about that.
I just don't see it penciling for somebody to come in and do that.
No,
I can see somebody coming in and using a vacant space, you know,
that's what I see,
but I can't see them breaking ground and building.
is I see a dead space that potentially gets filled.
Right,
And I can see
Right.
employees who have a very limited amount of time that they can be away from work, might wanna work out during their half-hour lunch, right?
right.
Yeah, but can you envision a case, that's the point, can you envision a case in your wildest imagination that some small parcel in the industrial section is now built out with a 4,500 square foot CrossFit gym just because it's permitted?
They're regulated. The parcels in TRIP are regulated.
So there are other regulations that would
Yeah, you couldn't,
reject that use.
yeah, you couldn't spin something off to 5,000 feet. It just couldn't be done.
Okay.
Paul, are you satisfied? I'm sorry, Commissioner Wilcox.
Yeah, we can leave them, we can move on from that.
Just want to stir the pot a bit, huh?
Hey,
So it takes,
That's a really good conversation to have
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
but
that's what I was saying.
explain to me though,
What?
why, what's the disadvantage of making it C instead of P?
For someone like in a vacant space?
No, I'm just saying, to change the code to making less than up to 5,000 square feet a conditional use rather than permitted.
So, I'll just say, so like you've got this vacant space down there, right?
Yeah,
Okay? And you've got a potential tenant that wants to go in there.
okay,
And then you have to file a land use application, pay $2,000, hire attorneys, consultants, whatever, go to the planning commission, beg to let this come in.
For
Right.
something that small, you just go, nah, forget it.
And what usually
Okay.
happens is the tenant just says, I'm out of here.
okay.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
So then this, really, at the end of the day, you can end up with a blighted place because the landlord can't get anybody to go in there. And this use goes to Wood Village or Fairview or wherever. So that can be the disadvantage.
Okay,
Really, the advantage to conditional use, in my opinion, is it's something we're looking at saying, could this be a problem? Could this be something we want to look at and say, maybe not here, maybe not now? Whereas something like that, I just don't see that as being like, ooh,
It's not gonna have a significant impact on the surrounding neighbors.
yeah, or the community as a whole.
okay.
That was very well, stated,
Oh, thanks.
thank you. Cleared up my mind.
Alrighty. We're moving on to, this is another clerical one, page 75. Yep, moving the mile out, or get rid of the mile completely, because it's already stated there, but yeah, putting the quarter in parentheses in J. Easy. That one, we will do that. Next one is page 104, reference to A2 zoning, that needs to be changed to HDR. Under C, under 4, it's, yeah, page 104, 4-28, if you're looking at the code ones instead. It's 4.414, section C, 1, the reference is A2. So we need to change that to HDR. We will do that. This one is page 1, moving on to page 111. This is under 4.650 C1 on 4-35. Reference to street through outlet mall.
Sorry, I'm just depressed.
You're what?
Sorry, I'm just depressed about it.
I know you referenced TC, but on 4650 on that first line, all commercial uses within the, can we say town center district instead of TC there?
Yep.
Okay, and what's your question
Actually,
about?
while we're on that, I was discussing this one the other day with Nick, the assistant planner. I was wondering if this code language should be slightly changed. Because as of right now, as it's read, it can be read in one of two different ways. One, it can be read as if any new built construction comes in the town center, it requires a type 2, or it can mean any sort of business that comes in that's technically a commercial business into an existing site requires a type 2. And I think this is that, I mean, if you think about that, how many businesses come and go in downtown, they're all commercial. That would mean a type 2 application for site development review for any business that wants to come through. And that's kind of what Nick and I were saying, where I was reading it as more any new, if you're going to build a new commercial, commercial space in downtown area in the town center, requires a minimum of a type 2. But playing devil's advocate, it's like, well, that means if I want to put in a yoga studio downtown, that's a commercial business. That means I have to do a type 2 just to get my business license. So I just want to make sure if that's clarified, then that's how we've been reading it initially, is that any new built construction. Just want to get clarification, make sure we're all on the same page. And if we all think that that sounds fine, then we can leave it as is. I just wanted to, since we were on it, let's just.
So this would be a new or a reno, but not a TI, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, TI.
Tenant improvement.
Perfect.
So that would make sense.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
You guys okay with that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Just want to make sure that's how we were,
We've been interpreting.
we've interpreting it that way, but we just wanted to, make sure that I don't want someone asking, why did a new business come into downtown and they didn't go through a type 2? Well, they just did put in
That's not
some.
usually what we ask.
I just want to make sure. Yeah. Okay, so now moving on to C.
What about C?
Kind of making a reference to an imaginary street.
No,
No, there's a
the
street.
street exists.
Yeah, there is a public street there.
Yeah.
Not
It's on the
through,
Yeah.
not through.
On the south side.
It
Around
goes
the
around that
mall.
gutter. It's technically through the site though, to the former sewage plant. It's around the mall, right?
Right.
To the north of the
Around the
complex.
north side of the
Says
mall.
Through the outlet mall.
Southwest, but it's golf.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does go through.
It is.
it's just not a straight line,
You're thinking through the building,
the one that we
but the
wanted.
street actually goes through the
site.
property, basically, on an easement. So it does go through. There's through and through.
Oh, okay.
And the outlet mall site would suggest the property, not the mall itself.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
All right, moving on to page 113, sorry.
But I had another question.
Yep,
on the,
go ahead.
That street view illustration.
Mm-hmm.
Says, let's see, maybe that was somewhere else.
I believe that is the next one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that was.
Yeah, it's coming.
I'm going based on your highlights, which are really helpful.
Right.
So that would be page 113, 4-37, right next to the street illustration there, number 4. Street dimensions, non-compliance with median strip width.
Right. I don't know of any street in the city that's got a 5-foot lawn between the curb and the sidewalk.
Well, that's what they want.
Yeah, this is for the town center. This is what they would prefer. If you're building a new area within the town center and you're putting in streets, this is what you need to follow. This is directly related to the town center plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What kind of street tree is that?
Looks like an oak on one side, and I'm not sure the one on the left.
Look better than the real ones.
All right, moving forward to page 116, that's 5-2. Under section 5.020, again, Scribners. So we'll go ahead and fix that. 123, page 123, 5-202, or 220, sorry. 5.220. A lot of numbers.
Okay, this one I think has current relevance, actually. You're showing, let's see. Okay, under development standard, permitted on gravel areas. And then you're showing across the board, yes. But then permitted on gravel areas, you have a footnote 1, which says parking on gravel surfaces limited to a maximum of 90 days in any 365-day period. So if they're permitted on gravel, but only for a limited time period, that's the way I read it.
Correct. So this is actually, this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier when we were talking about food carts. This whole table was removed from our current code. So this is how it was written originally. And for permitted on gravel areas, we do require, like say, a food truck to be on pavement. It cannot be on compact gravel. If it is on gravel, then you can be there for up to 90 days. You have to move, and then you can come back for another 90 days, but you can only do it, you can only do it once within a year. So that way they keep them moving around. That way they're not staying there for years on end on a gravel site.
Okay, you do know the Highland carts are on gravel.
I made a comment, that's why they have a TCO, not a CO. That's something they're working on. That planning, yes. We are aware. Which is understandable because when they put those in, this was not in our code. So we had to show them this. So, surprise. Yeah.
Hey, on 117,
Yes.
clear vision, 110 feet.
Yes.
Really?
So the only thing I changed in this section was putting these diagrams back in, because they were not in our code originally. So that's why you'll see a little footnote
I
on the side
believe you,
there.
but 110 feet's it's pretty frisky.
Which, clear vision, which standard is that?
B1.
B1.
Well, technically both, but depending on what we're trying.
Yeah, you'd like to
One's
go
for driveways and one's for public streets.
What does frisky mean?
It's pretty hard to meet that standard.
For example, say.
110 feet, in other words, is too long.
Yeah, if you own the property, yeah, it's pretty long.
The way, how that looks is because that's what creates the triangle where it's 15 feet back from the curbside and then 110 feet in either direction. So you have those points on either end and you come back to where that 15 point is. So it doesn't actually make a very large triangle, but especially for public streets, for example, I'm gonna use Diplomat Motors for this one. They called me asking if they can move their sign up a little bit closer to the corner. And with clear vision, you need to be able to see oncoming traffic. So that's why they have to stay out of that clear vision. Where the existing sign is, which is where they're gonna end up keeping their sign, is outside of that. So that's why the clear vision triangle needs to be clear so you can see pedestrians, traffic, anything coming. I believe 110 feet is a state standard. Don't hold me to that, but I believe it's a state standard.
I was doing math and it had some kind of commercial that came up.
Then I'm probably in trouble. If that's a state standard.
I can double check with.
Yeah, we'll double check.
I can double check.
Double check that.
I think it is. Again, that's typically I've always deferred to our engineering team because they're the ones that do the roads on that. And they usually let me know, nope, move it, or not. So, but that's just what I put this back in there from our old code.
Yeah, you're right, Dakota, this is the diagram that was missing when we had the front yard fencing hearing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Nick was using this diagram
Yeah.
from our old code. Because reading it, if you just read the language, is not very easy to picture.
Yeah.
The diagrams are very helpful.
I saw the gate closed one day.
Oh,
Write that down.
One day.
okay. So oh yeah, I've referenced the gravel footnote. Is that clear? Do we want to change anything there?
No, that's covered.
Okay. Moving on to 127.
That was just mainly for the benefit of the CAC.
Oh, yeah.
They actually mentioned it in the code. First I've seen that.
And we discussed that at the CAC meeting. So thank you for bringing that to the chair.
Just a comment.
Yep.
So what I was looking at is if somebody was actually going 25 miles an hour, what is 110 feet by, right? At 10 feet clear vision. Anyway, it buys you about 3 seconds. If they were going the speed limit, less if they're going faster.
Not a whole lot.
That's not a lot. I was just checking to see if it was reasonable.
And then your phone woke us up.
Yeah, you know, do you want to install this app? Hey.
All right. We're going to be moving on to page 165. Now we're into chapter 9. This is 9-1. For parking. And the question is to both the multifamily parking standard, and then there's a question about planned development. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, Paul?
Sure. My question is basically, is our parking requirement for multifamily still valid with the new state regulations?
I think the answer to that is it depends on where you're putting in multifamily.
Right.
If you're within the CFAC area, we cannot require. If you are outside, we still can. And correct me if I'm wrong, please.
A little bit. Because with CFAC, if you're a multifamily development or residential development, you're 1 parking space per unit. That's how they look at it. But we don't have to implement those changes until next year.
And that can be off-street parking too.
Right. So we wouldn't do that yet.
Ouch though. I mean, if you think about it, the place across the street, they're counting on off-street parking, right?
Right.
There was none coming here.
Right.
It was all taken up.
Yeah.
So it shows you how you can easily run out of parking real fast and not have a viable downtown. We could be Portland in no time,
Well, you'd hope not.
you know. Because I question whether they have viable downtown now.
Well, I don't think they have any parking issues now.
Can I make a clarification? So that one parking spot per unit for multi-family is in place now, right? So if we were to get an application in for multifamily, even though it's not in our code, it's a state statute and we would apply it. But we don't have to make those parking changes to our code until June 30th of next year. So there's certain things we are applying internally because we have to. But
And the ones that we don't, we don't.
So your statement was if we kill off the vibrancy of our town, then parking's not an issue anymore.
I did not say that.
It's logical.
What do you, Erica, what do you tell a developer then?
when they come in,
Yeah.
we tell,
I mean, they read the code and they say,
typically, we have a pre-application conference
Hmm.
with developers.
Yeah.
And we have like a little cheat sheet of what's in place right now for CFAC. And we let them know like, oh, by the way, you don't have to do this amount of parking for multifamily, you only have to do one parking space per unit.
What about it, what if we put a footnote on this that says, subject to change based on CFAC, which comes into existence June of 2025? That would call the question.
It'd have to be redone anyhow.
Exactly.
Oh.
So we're just kind of we give a lot of the information right up front. And so we could do that, but we're gonna go back and change it regardless.
Right, but what Paul is saying is somebody who's planning right now or between now and June may miss, and they're gonna take the code as gospel,
They're not.
unless
gonna-
there's at least a footnote which says, subject to change. Or not.
Okay, so the standards are gonna be, the parking standards are going to be reduced in 2025. So I guess the question is, why would we do that in 2024 when we don't have to do it until 2025?
Are they grandfathered in based on building now?
Building now, they have
And
to
then in-
follow what's in our code.
They have to follow what's in the code now.
Right, and then in 2025, they can keep their 2 spaces per dwelling unit.
We're not going around, the CFAC does not require us to go around removing parking spaces.
Okay,
And any developer that comes in can choose to put more, and most do, from what things have shown, most actually do,
Okay.
because they know it's more attractive to people to come and rent. But we can't require them in 2025. But we could be like, but if you, just
I see.
nudge, nudge, it'd be great if you did more. We can't control them, they're up to them, but right now they have to follow this, and then we're not gonna be taking anything away. So if someone comes in tomorrow, they're approved, and then the things change in 2025, they're approved under our current standard.
I got it.
They're goal posted is basically what it's considered.
And sometimes something that's out in the future changes, right? There's always a chance for change.
There's always a change.
I'm still hearing a mixed message.
What's the,
So if somebody comes in now, are they required the 2 1/3? That's my question.
No, legally, if they choose to only put in one parking spot per unit, they have that option.
But
They have
that's not
that
what this
option.
says.
we're recommending 2 1/3, we're not requiring 2 1/3.
You are. It says minimum. It
Right,
says
but
minimum is 2 1/3.
But it's overridden by the state statutes.
Thank you.
Right.
Which supersedes any local code.
Unless the state statute goes away and then goes back to local code.
Okay. And we don't incorporate the state statutes into this code
Oh, we will.
We will.
We'll be making
2025.
significant parking spaces.
in 2025.
Yes.
Yeah, in 2025.
But today, the minimum is 2 1/3.
Depending on,
No, it's minimum, well, I
The,
agree, what's the
Okay. So-
clarifying, statement?
CFAC doesn't cover everything. Right? And so some of this is in effect and some of this is not. We're not doing a blanket one spot until we have to.
So if you
And so
recall,
why would we limit parking until we had to? Our citizens would come in and hang us from a tree if we did that. We just said, tell you what, everybody, all you have to put in now is one spot for anything.
Yeah,
What do you think the community do?
They'd be pretty upset.
They go, why would you do that?
and we'd say because the state mandates it.
State mandates it,
Next June,
yeah. But we're gonna be proactive and let them do it now. I mean, I have trouble understanding that. Why would we cut our parking standards completely until we had to?
Meaning it's not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
right,
We think there's a parking problem
so
now.
we're not cutting it, because we're saying the minimum is 2 1/3.
Right.
So that's what they have to do now.
unless they're in the CFAC zone,
Yeah, unless they're in the CFEX zone.
which is that specific kind of as the crow flies area, sort of we've been over about the main.
Which doesn't come into effect until next June.
That portion is in effect now.
We just
Part of
talked
it is
about
in effect now, part of it goes into effect next June.
Right.
So then there needs to be a footnote that says that.
so,
Because this is all encompassing. But you're saying, no, it's not, there are two different areas in which rules are different.
And
Oh,
the
that's
rules,
always true.
and that is true, rules are different in areas all the time. The only thing I guess I would say when we talk about the footnote is, I'm listening to staff saying, hey, look, we can manage this internally, we can figure this out, and that's their job. Our job's to write this, their job's to interpret it and make it work. And if they're saying we can make this work, I'm saying, okay, go for it.
and we have been making it work.
Yeah.
Because it's been that way for almost a year
But-
now.
That's an
So-
important point, because that's always true, right?
Yeah.
So there are situations where if I follow Oregon law, I'm in trouble with federal law. And I'm going, well, I'm gonna get in trouble with the state and the federal, so I'm gonna obey the federal law, right? And so there's a lot of examples in code where this jurisdiction doesn't match that one and so forth. And you end up having to go with who has the overall authority.
And of course, we got the county and we got Metro.
Yeah.
Oh, you name it, yeah. Oh,
But in a development of the code, we try to take all of those into account.
We do, and if it was June of 2025, this would look different than it looks today.
Yeah, it will look different, sure, but it is different now. Because you're saying it is not 2 1/3 in a CFEC zone today. And that's different than what it says here.
Right, because
But you can manage it, nothing.
yeah, we're administrating it
Yeah.
But,
and
okay, and then all I would have to say, I'm not just trying to be argumentative, I'm simply saying, we don't have to change anything about this, right? Because they're managing it. And I'm sure they'll take whatever into account. I mean, you know, that's kind of going to the
Yeah,
extreme.
let's back the truck up a
But-
little bit there.
Well, yeah, okay, but
Okay.
what I'm saying is,
Slippery slope.
it's still, you know, but
Pardon me?
it's still in our court to make this reflect current reality.
Yes, and we'll get there here shortly,
Okay.
in the next 6 months.
Okay.
In June, it'll all be squared away.
Yeah.
What do you mean by a CFAC zone? Doesn't it apply to the entire city limit, anything within the city limits?
It does.
Well, then the
Yeah.
entire city is the zone. So the standard is one space per
Per
unit.
unit.
So I'm with Kevin. I don't know why what's this, just a suggestion or is Chair Stebbins says as a recommendation? It's just wishful thinking.
Well, it is, so so what we have done, so if an applicant comes in today and they are proposing a multifamily development, I have our current parking standards, and it says, you know, recommended parking standards, because we know our current standards are gonna be changing. So we let them know our recommended parking standard is, you know, 2 parking spaces per whatever it is in our code, instead of 1 parking space per unit. Because we hear from the community, we wanna keep our parking standards. So we literally recommend that to a developer. Does that make sense?
Because in the CFEC zone, 1 is not mandatory. They're saying 1 is the minimum, but a
Correct.
builder can put
Put
as
in more.
many as they want,
Correct.
could put in.
Could, yep,
But the minimum, okay, but so this isn't true as it's written. The minimum legal is not 2 1/3, the recommended is 2 1/3.
Correct.
The minimum is 1. But you don't wanna show all your aces, right? Is that the idea?
Well, you don't
You
have
wanna-
any, okay,
You don't wanna give away the store. You wanna fool people into putting in 2 1/3 spaces.
I don't think you're fooling anybody, Mr. Minkoff. I don't think it's an intent to fool someone. I think it's an intent to try and somehow reach the community's expectation. Okay, I don't think this body or the city council, the CAC, or anybody that's involved in Troutdale at all ever would have recommended 1 spot for 1 unit.
Of course, we all objected
Right,
to the CFEC
so
requirements.
I don't think anybody's trying to fool anybody. I think we're trying to manage it. Now, what if we said in here what our recommended parking standard is?
sorry, what was that?
What if we said in here what the recommended parking standard is?
I think we could do that legally,
Right,
because it wouldn't be required, it would just say recommended.
right.
That's
So,
a
the
perfect
minimum is
solution.
1, the recommended is 2.3, or whatever the case may be.
I think that's an ideal solution.
Well, let's say
It's more honest.
let's say I'm from out of state, right? And I'm going to a place, I don't know the locality at all. I'm doing something
Lucky
there.
you.
And then next thing I know, everybody's mad at me and I've got protesters out in front because I did what, you know, the minimum was and they're not happy. Yeah, it's kind of nice to know what the recommended is. I can see that.
The fact is, we're not happy about CFEC.
Right,
At all.
right.
And I don't think it's a bad thing to get the rest of the community up in arms about it as well. That a great deal of protest and writing to the Congress people and the Oregon Senate, et cetera, may be a good thing ultimately. But it is true that the law that it's one parking space and recommended. I love that idea.
Historically, people are reactionary, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. I wish you had any type of momentum to do anything about CFAC. And I agree with you, you might get people up in arms, but to be quite candid with you, I don't think your governor really cares. And I know that your local representatives don't care. Because they've been asked to take this on and they've said, can't do it, won't do it, have other things to do.
All right, moving on, next one.
Thank you.
Moving on, on that same section, you had a note here, Commissioner Wilcox, about plan development definition.
Yeah.
So that's under, it's under a PUD. Sorry, so it's a planned unit development. I'm just gonna pull up my definition.
Oh, okay.
MPNU maybe?
Let me get there really quickly.
Okay, I know what planned unit.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So that's what it's referring to.
You should.
Yeah.
Of anybody sitting here, you should.
Okay, moving on to the next page. I see that that's another missed location. It should be 5.200, not 5.1 under food vendor, mobile food vendor. So I made that note here. We will change that.
Okay.
Next one is page 68. And there's a note here, so 68, which is section 9.030 off-street parking within the town center overlay district, A, 2-space minimum. You had a question mark about that?
So that's the current standard within those districts?
Yes, and that goes into our previous discussion as well.
Okay.
All right, next one, which I noticed there is a typo, which is also on page 68, 9.040A. It says within 400 feet, 400 feet. So we're gonna remove one of those feet. Also on page 68, under the same section, C1, adjacent shall mean the same side and within the same block as the use. You have a note here mentioning same block isn't necessarily adjacent to property.
Right, what I was thinking is if somebody has a business, say, and they're given credit for parking at the curb in front of their building, it wouldn't necessarily, it might be neighbors on the same block.
Could be with a small storefront, yeah.
So I guess what I'm getting at, they shouldn't be given credit for the entire block that they sit on, just the space that's actually physically adjacent to their property.
So the footage of their actual lot,
Yeah,
would that work, Ms. Palmer? The frontage footage?
I have to reread this. Same slide. And the same block frontage. I think that would work.
Okay.
it's like, I've seen parking regulations that have like limited parking according to time, and they say, can't move down, you have to move to a separate block, you can't, move one space down. And that's a separate issue, but it's an example of spaces within the same block.
I think that's it.
How do we want to word that? I just want to make sure I put a note in
Oh.
here. I want to make sure I add my notes so I can
What's
go
that?
back. For that one, for C1, how do we want to word that again?
So basically it would be determined by the frontage of the building, of the lot, I should say.
So adjacent shall mean the frontage
Yeah,
of the lot.
yeah, based on the frontage.
You could say adjacent shall mean on the same side and limited to,
Limited to the frontage of the lot.
yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And then there was one more which we kind of noted earlier within, within Appendix A, it also references Second Street and Southeast Amy Street, so, where 257th intersects, and we will make that change as well.
You know, you're loading on 9-10, 5 AM to 12 AM. You don't think you'd be able to enforce that, do you?
I mean, this is a good point that we can discuss if you'd like. It is an interesting, it really leaves you just getting your deliveries during the day. Unless you choose to try to do that overnight.
You don't usually choose. What?
Nothing.
You don't usually choose when you're gonna get them. They usually just show up. And the problem is if you've got let's say you've got a trucking company bringing in whatever, that takes longer to unload than some other things. So if you've got like a beer vendor unloading at the tavern, right? He's doing that during the day, but some of the other stuff, you can't logistically get a semi in that area during the day, so they come at night. And I don't know how you would get around that. I mean, I like the hour restriction, I just don't know how it would work.
We're thinking
If that's
coming up
something
with-
you want staff for us to take a look at more in depth.
Yeah, you
do
could,
that.
I just don't know, I don't know that you could limit it.
Have you ever monitored?
No, and we, if we ever received a complaint,
Right.
we would go out and monitor, and do some sort of enforcement. But,
Well, no, I'm not saying enforcement, I'm just saying see when it's actually happening.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
it does happen various hours other than
it does.
more in the afternoon a lot of times than
Mhm,
before
yeah.
noon.
But also, if you've got more, I'm thinking you've got more activity, you're gonna have more deliveries and they're gonna be more spread out. They'd have to be. But. Was that all you had to go?
That was all of the notes from Commissioner Wilcox. If anybody else had anything else they'd like to discuss. Now is the time.
27 pages.
Commissioner Stephenson, that time range you're looking at
Yeah.
is, I can never keep straight, it's 12 AM, midnight or noon?
Midnight.
12 AM is midnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually 5 AM to 12 AM.
It doesn't work
So
quite
then
right.
they are, but in the hours.
Do you mean 5 AM to 12 PM to noon?
No, it's.
No.
It's, how it's written now is from midnight to 5 AM.
Well, but it says 5 AM
Or 5
to
AM to
12 AM,
Which is 5 AM.
which is
to 12 midnight, right?
not quite right. I think it should be 12 AM to 5 AM.
Which section was this on
That's
again?
what I'm thinking.
Page 9-9.
9-9. Oh, right down here, okay.
12 AM would be midnight.
Yeah,
So currently it's.
so it's
5
daily between, it should be, F2 should be daily between 12 AM and 5 AM. Or all operations occur between 12 AM and 5 AM.
It's only 5 hours.
Well, no, I'm just saying, for the correct, if you say from 5 AM to 12 AM, you're
That's
talking about,
Oh, that's, well, that's because
What, how many?
during from 12 AM to,
16 hours? You're talking about all day. And that's what you intend?
for 5 AM to 12 AM, the all day, no more than 3.
Got it.
No more than 3 operations within that time
I
period.
see.
Yeah,
I see.
Any one
Okay.
establishment.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Okay, so Saul gets 3 and the Frog gets 3 and.
Burrito Shop gets 3, they all get 3.
Yep.
I just don't know how you're
So
gonna
we
be
could have
able
a
to
street block off
ever
the
time that out.
Well, nothing's perfect.
Especially reading through like the town center plan, because like, a lot of this, especially reading through the town center plan, the 2 big issues when it comes to, parking and stuff like that were parking and loading.
And loading.
Which is funny because there's not enough loading spots, so the street gets clogged up. So also there isn't enough parking spots. So it's kind of a catch-22, to where we could give up and have a loading spot that they can pull off to the side, has to stay open, you're only able to be there for a certain amount of time to load and unload, but then it also
Yeah,
takes
parking
away
spot.
parking. And most of the time, those loading positions are 2 car lengths, 25 feet, rather than a single, because they're trucks. So that's why, reading through the town center plan, I was looking through this, actually at this exact one, wondering who's got a great idea for this, because it's the 2 big issues that are in the downtown area.
You can't because you don't know when you're gonna get a 48 or 53-foot semi.
And you're
Coming
just trying
in.
to manage it
Yep.
the best you can,
Yeah.
right? And that's the way it was written. To allow, flexibility, hey, everyone is gonna get 3 at times, like 3 loads per day.
Where then it's not regulated, you can get a
But-
bunch overnight.
But you can't control that either.
Yeah,
Correct,
Yeah, in the middle of the night, you don't really care, right?
Exactly.
But
And like, that's the hope, but again, like you had mentioned, can't really
It'll be more in
force
the middle of
people
the
to do
night,
that.
but like an example, you can't say, uh-oh, Coca-Cola, you can't come on Tuesday because I've already got,
Three
Three people
Pepsi
coming.
drivers.
and then Coca-Cola's gonna say hasta lasagna. They're not gonna come on Wednesday. They're gonna say, well, we come here on Tuesday, that's it.
It's, and we're not the only city I know, like,
No.
you know, any sort of small
Yeah.
downtown, Hillsborough had the same issue, and their street was wider. But they had the same exact issue with loading and unloading, cause it's you know, similar style, old town, narrow street, tough to try to get people in and out of there without blocking up traffic. There's no, until someone comes out with a really great way to regulate it, we'll do it. But I don't have any answers for it. It's a conundrum.
There was a time when bandits, the deliveries pulled into their parking lot and unloaded and stuff. And all of a sudden they turned that into their outdoor dining and bandits gets deliveries in the middle of the street.
Well, staff let them turn that in, and,
Or Lowe's gets
it's their fault.
Lowe's
Previous.
Right, yeah. Everything was,
Lowe's got it delivered last week and they weren't open yet, so the guy just sat there in the street waiting for them to open. So we could unload.
may we get to commissioner comments? I have a couple. I know we've done number 5.
Unless anybody else has anything left for number 5.
Doesn't sound like it.
I think we're good, okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilcox, for putting that together. It's
Yes,
very
thank you.
thorough.
You're up.
That's exactly what staff needed, so I want to say a big thank
No.
you. That's exactly what we were looking for.
You're up first.
Just a few comments. We are, we've issued an intent to award for the Sandy River Front Trail for a contractor to start that project. So that's underway. Tomorrow is a TCAB meeting at 7 o'clock in this room, if folks are interested. I think those are my only 2 announcements.
Who did we get for the bid?
The intent to award went to, Cough Construction.
The only thing is, I'll make these changes that we discussed. I'm happy to send them, you know, the digital copies back out to everybody. If you could let me know how we all think we stand, because if not, then we can start putting this into a full package to potentially come next meeting, if we can get it done in time for recommendation to council. And so we can get our code all updated with this omnibus. So I'll get these updated, I'll send it out right off the bat, and then if everybody can just shoot me an email, let me know.
Okay.
What do you think?
Nice job, thank you.
Thank
Good
you
job.
for the great discussion too, everyone. Like, this is what we needed, this is what I was looking for. So this is exactly what I was hoping for. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Makeup.
Thank you. My 2 questions, based on my limited experience on the planning commission. At what point does the approval of so many variances to the code, like we discussed about that one residence where they needed a different setback for their chain link fence because of a belligerent tenant they had. At what point do so many approvals then actually require or suggest, at the very least, a change to the planning code? Because, you know, we keep modifying, you know, and approving these changes, but at some point, it seems like that would trigger an actual change in the code. So I'm wondering what the process is for that.
Well, do you have one in particular
No,
that you've seen come up multiple times?
not multiple times, but as I say, my experience is that almost every request for a modification or variance has been approved.
But we denied that one.
Yeah,
No.
Yes, the one on the
Yes, we did.
setback of the fence, that's denied.
Well,
Denied.
it was denied for what he requested, but he still was able to move it back to that 15-foot diagonal, triangle.
because that was what the code allowed.
Okay,
The variance he asked for was denied.
And he most likely will appeal.
The appeal period is over.
The appeal
He didn't appeal
period's over.
He did not.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So he's gonna have to do that. He was saying that would not.
but I understood the vote, I thought the vote was, I guess the vote was yay for the variant, to vary his request based on the code. Okay,
Well, we're by.
but I've seen, so, for example, you wanna know the apartment buildings that were built on Halsey. 4 stories when the code is 3. And then there's a big discussion about, well, that's because, it's on a hill, and they need, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good reasons, but my question is, well, if we're going to permit 4 stories, then at what point does that then lead to, okay, we're just gonna modify the code to allow everybody to build 4 stories?
I mean, when is it a precedence?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm just,
it's not,
really, I'm curious.
it's not a precedence because each variance is taken on its own merit. Okay, they're all treated individually and none of them set a precedence for something else, no matter what happens. One of the things with Fox Ridge is that development was done when staff had the latitude to do a 30% variance as a type 2. Okay,
They no longer have that latitude?
they don't.
Okay.
Okay.
That, yeah, it's before my time. Okay, I'm just curious how that works. The other question is, has the planning commission ever had a work session to discuss a city identity? And what I mean by that is, I lived many years in Carmel, California, and if you've ever been there, you know that there's a requirement for red terracotta roofs, same thing in Santa Barbara. All the roofs have to be red terracotta. There is a certain, the code is based on a look and feel. Now it doesn't mean every single building has to be the same color and the same exact dimensions, etc. But you get it, you have an identity for the city. So my question is, have we ever had that kind of discussion about what the identity is for Troutdale?
Well, there's a lot of identity discussions and sometimes arguments about Troutdale and what it is. We have a pretty strong identity for the north side because that's what was developed most recently as far as aesthetics, things of that nature, and there's been times that's been expanded. I can tell you when we do look at doing that and putting more standards in place, we usually get quite a bit of pushback. And you asked, the first question you asked if we ever have a work session.
Mm-hmm.
This was a work session.
Mm-hmm. But to discuss a building standard that leads toward an identity for the city.
Yeah, that would be, in my opinion, that would be a cohesive work between historic landmarks, the city council, and the planning commission. You need all 3 of those.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Allen?
So the answer is yes. There was a study done and it was done by I think it was a marketing group, right? So that paperwork actually does exist and if you, I think if you check in with City Hall, they'll probably dig that up for you.
Marley would have that.
Yeah. But he's asking if something's actually,
Well, and
Right.
has that impacted the planning, the code, the development code, based on what was agreed upon in terms of the marketing?
It was a study, it was suggestions, but I do not believe it made it back into the code.
right. Council didn't act on it.
Right.
But we do have design standards
Yes, we do.
in our code for the town center area. And we're going to go back with our main streets on Halsey work and look at additional design standards for the Halsey corridor to kind of, develop a vision for what it should look like that's consistent as properties develop. So we kind of have that some same, like, when buildings are developed, they have this similar, like, building materials and paints and
Aesthetic, to keep that
Aesthetic.
kind of what it feels like down here.
Yeah.
The goal is to stretch it down past 257. That's the idea. So we have a longer town, like what it feels like, the downtown, but we want to make that feel further. And for example, when I was in Hillsborough, that's something they were doing in their downtown. It's a little harder to do of the full city, as it's already been established. For example, you could look at Leavenworth, right? Or Mount Angel. They made a drastic change in their code, I think it was 10 to 15 years ago, to try to become the German style of town. And they did a full code audit and changed everything and basically they required a lot of that. Where here, can't necessarily require any new built industrial, Safeway to look a specific way, but we can, within our town center, try to implement specific design standards to make that feel a little bit longer, to have that really hone in on that small town feel and, that westerny, edge of the, gateway to the gorge type mentality. So we are going back for that.
And remember what I said earlier about people are reactionary here, and probably everywhere, right? So we have gotten hit with some pushback when something got built that didn't fit this look and feel, right? It's gotten ugly.
It's ugly either way.
Thank you.
Really good discussion, I appreciate it, appreciate the hard work. Special thanks to Commissioner Wilcox. You had to spend a lot of time on that, but you typically do. And that was a great effort, good discussion, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you for all the work put in. Other than that.
Commissioner Prickett?
Yes, again, thank you, Paul, for all your hard work. I know that takes a lot of time and effort. And the city staff, thank you for all your efforts in getting this done. I have one thing I'd like to talk about, but I think I'm going to do that also at the Parks Department, is that the Imagination Station ground structure is terrible. I mean, it's got holes in it again. It just doesn't look good. Kids are tripping. They have mats everywhere. And it's well used, and it's the best used park here. So I don't know how they can maintain it by it just wears out too quickly for the amount of use it gets. So the surface of the ground needs to be redone at some point.
Now, in the budget committee, it was approved for fixing not the whole thing, but the worst area.
The budget committee did not change that item,
Okay,
all right? And I'll discuss that with Parks next month.
Okay, good.
But there was some comments that that item had been pulled from the budget, and that item was not pulled from the
No,
budget.
it was not. It was not cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Prickett. Commissioner Wilcox?
Just wanted to respond to Commissioner Minkoff's opening comments about variances. And that's something I've wondered about too. There's one particular variance I've seen in the past more than once where people have signs in front of their businesses. And there's a setback requirement for that. And they want to move it closer to the street for better visibility. Those get, approved every single time. So I question whether the standards are too strict. As long as you have the sideline visibility requirement satisfied, I don't see why you couldn't move your sign out where you need it to be. That's all I have. Thank you.
I also want to thank both you all and staff for all your work on this. It's been great. I know we've all contributed in some way, but you guys have done a lot of work, so I really appreciate that. I also wanted to just point out briefly that although we may not always agree on certain points, I do really enjoy the fact that we are able to continue to work towards a solution. And it's good when we can accomplish something like that. So it makes me happy to be on this team. So appreciate you guys, all of you. And to Commissioner Prickett's comment with just being involved with parks, I just wanted to reassure you that it is absolutely on the radar. It's an ongoing conversation with Jonah, the superintendent of the parks department. It's kind of a top priority right now for them to kind of figure out ways going forward. And it sounds like there's going to be an ongoing discussion with other committees about that. But it's definitely not just cooked to the back burner. So that's all I got.
Okay, I was gonna say on the sign, I don't wanna get too deep into it, but sometimes what the variance is for is they wanna move a sign partially into the right of way. And so the variance is actually moving the sign. Sometimes they get them into the right of way with a variance.
I haven't seen one of those come across, or I don't know, maybe.
I've only found one historically, but I also haven't been directly looking for it. But I did come across one
Okay.
that was approved, but I haven't seen too many of them. But that's also, again, I haven't done research on it to.
You're not
dive
seeing
in.
that many approved.
Huh?
You're not seeing that many.
We don't approve, we haven't had any come across since I've been here,
Okay.
in the,
And I would scrutinize that.
yeah, there was one that was put up and it was taken back down.
Yeah.
So, but I have only seen one that was approved, and I believe it was in 2020, maybe 2020, maybe 2019. But again, I haven't done the research of actually looking specifically for that. I've just seen that one as I was just digging through some old files, back when I
Those
started.
are always a hot button.
That's when we were doing research to change our variance regulations.
I think the last one was for the food carts, wasn't it?
Which,
The sign.
oh, the sign, you mean the legal signs or illegal signs they have, which ones would those be?
That was
Okay.
to
I
height,
thought that was the height.
that was to height, because it's on their property.
Yeah.
But there was a variance to that to allow for a height.
That was the main sign,
It's the
right?
Yeah,
green
that's
ones
the
that
primary
aren't the
sign.
legal signs.
Yeah.
One's that on the freeway?
Yes. Just stating a fact, okay. All right, I want to thank everyone for the discussion this evening. Very good. Thank you for all your work. Paul, thank you for your attention to detail as always. And this is a lot of work and it is, I was going to say relatively dry, but it's beyond dry. This is hard to do, and we don't do it that often, but we do have to do it, and I appreciate everybody's everybody taking it seriously and getting it done, so thank you. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Well, we have,
I second.
Oh, wait.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, I was gonna call on you. Counselor Glantz.
Hi, so I'm just here to give a quick pitch that it's not too late to sign up to run for city council. My term is almost done, so it's somebody else's turn now. I think there's 3 council positions and a mayor position open.
So you still have time to put your application in, right?
Oh, no, I'm done. I have served my sentence, I mean term.
Thank you for that. And I will just say that the city will be less without you on council. You've done an excellent job and represented us all very well, so thank you for your years of service there.
Here, here.
Appreciate it.
So now one of you needs to take my place. Decide amongst yourselves.
All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.